Good evening. It's 7:30, and I herewith call the January 24th, 2018 meeting of the Historic District Commission to order, and I'd like to start with a roll call starting on my left.
Frank Johnson.
Gregory Mann.
Mark Feinstein.
Mary Jo LaFrance.
Chris Kurtz.
John Roddy.
Dean Ventola.
Robert Love.
Chris Berger.
Fine. Thank you. We have a quorum, and we are officially in session. This commission is empowered to meet and act under Article 12 of the City Code of Gaithersburg. The technical qualifications of the staff of this commission and the members of the commission are on file with the city and are available on request to any applicant and are hereby made a part of the legal record of each and every application heard this evening. Each application heard this evening is considered on its own merit and is not to be considered as establishing a precedent for any other application. Okay, let me move to an approval of the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes?
Sure. Yes.
Any comments, concerns, edits, corrections? Okay, the chair is open to a motion.
So move. Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Great. All right, our first order of substantive business is a courtesy review of 16 South Summit. Chris?
Yes, this is a courtesy review for the proposed police station and council chambers at 16 South Summit Avenue. The property is located at the southwest corner of South Summit and Old Town Avenues. It measures approximately 2.76 acres and is situated within the Old Town Courtesy Review area. The property is zoned CBD Central Business District. The subject property includes a 43,650 square foot three-story office building constructed in 1998. The irregularly shaped building measures 40 feet tall. Exterior materials include red face brick, metal panels, precast stone horizontal bands, decorative metalwork, and precast stone caps. The applicant, the City of Gaithersburg, proposes to construct a sally port, two vestibules on both the front and back, an outbuilding, a generator enclosure, and a transformer enclosure. This application comes before the HDC in accordance with Section 24-2274, in which the HDC may review and make recommendations to the Planning Commission on applications for site development plan approvals on a site located within a courtesy review area. And presenting tonight is Mr. David Schrader, Managing Partner of Schrader Group Architecture. So in just a moment, I will switch over the screen to you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Schrader. And for anyone in the audience, we will be giving an opportunity to comment in any way, but I think maybe we'd be better served to let Mr. Schrader make his presentation first.
Okay.
You're good to go.
Thank you. Appreciate being in front of you this evening, and I know the precedent typically is to give the presentation then open for questions and answers, but if I miss something on a slide and you need clarification, please feel free to point that out. Happy to answer questions as we go. So yes, this is the, and we're going to call it the repurposing of 16 South Summit Avenue, and I'm here representing the city on behalf of the police department as well as the council chambers, which will be two of the portions of project that go into this building. We hope that you see that repurposing of a 20-year-old building that has been partially filled over the years and has actually to some extent done some weathering on the exterior. We're hoping that you see that the things that we're going to do improve that and provide both the police and the city with a new home, and also hopefully create a more vibrant center to the historic district here as a result of the project that we're planning. So we'll get into the project a little bit here. When you look at this as a whole, the major things that we're proposing here really are the Sally Port addition, a general brightening and cleaning of the building, of the facade and of the architecture, and then some fencing, and the fencing actually becomes a component that we'll want to address as well. So I'll start with a site plan and the existing site plan. We obviously are sitting in the City Hall on the right-hand side of the image here. The building in question sits just south of Old Town Avenue on the top of the screen here, and then on the right-hand side of the screen is South Summit Avenue. And so that's the 16 South Summit portion directly across or adjacent catty corner to the post office. The existing police station, as all of you are familiar with, sits on the left-hand side of the property here. and St. Martin, the school portion, sits on the south side of the property line. And we're trying to delineate the property line with the heavy yellow. Some of the areas in question that we will go through tonight include the southern parking lots. You'll see some transformation of use there. You'll also see that a portion of the parking lot directly south of the building itself becomes part of the Sallyport structure, and I'll define what the Sallyport is a little bit more fully as we get into it. Because we're using the backside of the building to such an extent, we also kind of reinvigorate the plaza, redesign it to an extent so that not only is it an entry for the police station, but it's also an evening entry for council chambers and things like that that will go on as part of the city. And as for the parking itself, we do some adjustment to the parking, although the majority of what you see will probably be a restored pavement and a relining of all of the parking for the balance of that. So that gives you kind of a sense of the existing site, some of the things that I'll propose this evening as we go through that. I start out with three major views of the existing building, and the intent here is to try to define some of the things that we will be doing. And part of that will be a comparison of the existing facades and the proposed facades in some of the slides that follow. So you're looking from the northeast corner first here at the building. A lot of cast stone and brick, as Chris noted earlier, and then these are kind of a raised or partially depressed, but look like a raised panel, and it's done in a metal. It's a stamped metal product, and then there is a aluminum window system that runs around on top of that on each of the floors. At the ground level, the window goes virtually to grade or to the first floor line, and then up to a set of panels as well. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as we want to try to articulate that pattern a little bit more through the building. You also see kind of a nice rhythm to the brick facade that carries that street front very nicely. And then to try to delineate the first floor from the upper two, you have a cast stone band that runs around the perimeter as well. There are three planters in the front that we're going to talk a little bit further about as part of what we do to the architecture of the corner of Old Town and South Summit. And then there is a planter on the right-hand side that we do plan to do some modification as well as restoration to, because it becomes part of a secondary egress path out of one of the community rooms in the building. Looking at the building as you're seeing it from this facade, we do extend out under that number 16 a weather vestibule, because there's not one currently in the building, so you'll see how that takes part of the architecture as well. And kind of common to when a number of us entered the architectural profession, the green that was carried through. We are proposing to brighten up the building a little bit to eliminate the green from the window systems only and potentially go to an anodized aluminum look while maintaining the green panels. And so it's a way to try to brighten up the building and kind of bring it into the 21st century in terms of the architecture. Two other things from this facade that you'll note, these kind of gooseneck light pieces that go around the perimeter of that cast stone band. We are proposing taking those off and putting a slightly more simplistic light fixture on there, and you'll kind of see that in the facade renderings as we go. And to try to delineate that this is a police building, it is a city building, we are going with we're proposing going with a kind of a globe fixture in each of those locations to kind of connote the old police entry points to the building as well. So those are a number of things that you see on the facade that we'll be modifying in the proposed renderings. But ultimately, again, what you'll see is you'll just see a brightening of the 20-year-old facade in the end. So that's the first part of it. We then come down to the southeast corner, and the main reason for showing this, other than the same things that we just talked about for the corner of Old Town and South Summit, is this end of the building, this south end of the building, is kind of where the activity takes place in the proposed floor plans. And by the activity, we have a police secure fence line that goes around this part of the parking lot. And what typically happens in police stations, there's kind of a process of intake. That intake includes having kind of a private entry point for the police cars to come, having a vehicle sally port for those police cars to pull in, so a detainee that comes into that sally port is not able to run once the police car doors are opened, and then that detainee goes in and is processed in a processing area, and ultimately a determination of whether they go into a cell or not or move on to another place is all happening at that point in the building. And so what I'll start to define in the architecture is, first of all, a sally port that we've worked very hard to try to work with the progression of this facade. But one of the other things we've also done is you'll see a daytime rendering from one view and an evening rendering from another. And the point being there that we want to try to define that we have a number of spandrel panels that are going in that will change the light configuration coming from within the building at night. And that, we think, is an important part of this. Those spandrel panels typically end up in some of these more private areas like we're going to talk about, the cell structure and so on. And it will change the effect of the building slightly at night from the daytime. Daytime, it'll all, as those of you who are familiar with decent spandrel panels, will look like window systems around the building. Then the last and also important facade is this facade looking east from the parking lot. Because of that kind of continued rhythm of the facade, the brick facade around the perimeter here, we do try to liven up the back entry so it becomes a community-based entry point, similar to the Old Town and Summit Corner, to have the same kind of presence that they have there. And we've been struggling a lot, I will say, with the generator enclosure because the generator is massive. It runs the entire building. And it has to run the building 100%, which is unique for those of you involved with any kind of medical work. Know that medical buildings are the same way. Police stations are run 100% on generator when the power goes down. And so finding a way to architecturally treat the perimeter of that thing has been a struggle, and we think we're at a point where we're all happy with the solution, and we hope that you feel the same way about it. The last part of this facade is you see vaguely the surrounding system, the screening around the HVAC units on the roof from this point. If you look at the roof plan of this building, the existing building, you'll happen to see that roof screening is a little bit haphazard, and it's kind of interesting to see how it was put up there. It does screen, but it's not exactly a clean perimeter to the building. We are putting more HVAC units on. We have a higher load than the office building would have had. And so we've actually got a little bit more equipment to screen. And so the screen is being put on in a little bit more regularized way. And you'll see this is the only view you really get a glimpse of it. And we're trying to treat that architecturally as well. Those are all the elements that you'll see changing on this, as well as that beautiful wood structure in the parking lot surrounding the current transformer. So that will go away. Okay, moving on to the site plan itself. Trying to maintain as much as we can the parking lot the way it currently stands. Obviously, we will be continuing to try to landscape the perimeter here, and we actually had a great landscape plan shared with us today that's even a hair further in landscaping than this. But I'm going to draw a line here behind which the police have their secure activities. And so the line goes from this generator enclosure down the parking lot line, across through these parking spaces, down around the police outbuilding, and I'll describe what's in that building shortly, along the back side of St. Martin's, and then back up to the front of the Sally Port. There are two gates in that. One gate comes out of the parking lot, and the general movement through this parking lot will more or less be a one-way movement from the parking lot in, through, and around, potentially into the Sally Port if necessary, and then many times out South Summit Avenue. The police do have the ability to do it the other way. We do have a card reader that allows them access to come back in the other way, but you probably won't see traffic doing that quite as much. As a result, there are some secure parking spots here, and the majority of those parking spots will be police cruiser. There's some parallel parking for people who are coming in during shift to do whatever they have to do within the building. So the outbuilding in the lower left-hand corner is basically a building to contain larger scale evidence, some of their storage, some of their road equipment that they have, and there's also a small vehicle evidence processing area to bring in anything that's been part of a crime scene. So that kind of thing goes on in here. There's also a bicycle storage area in the building as well. This portion of the red area is the generator enclosure. The portion just above that is a Pepco transformer enclosure, and we'll try to share with you how we treat that architecturally. The portion directly on the south side of the building here is the Sally Port that I've spoken about several times. And the two red areas on either side, the Old Town Avenue South Summit corner and then the plaza area, are weather vestibules, and so those are additions as well. And then the plaza itself, we've worked hard to try to allow for various directional access points to this to make all directions that you come from the parking lot feel inviting and invited into the space with some nice, nice landscaping. Landscaping less by the police door, so we're dealing with some of the septed type things and trying to reduce areas that people can hide behind when officers come and go. And we do landscaping along the front side of our gate structure, and we also have some landscaping on the north facade. We will be pulling out all of the existing landscaping in those 3 planters out front and putting new landscaping in, some monument signs to speak to the city functions that are within, and then the 4 flagpoles that you'll see in the next renderings. The last part of this is the fencing that I described earlier, the one running from the generator enclosure around the parking lot back to the edge of the existing police station property line will be the metal fencing I'm going to share with you. It's a metal privacy fencing. There's a wood fencing that runs around the perimeter. It's a 2-sided wood fencing all the way along the edge of St. Martin's and up to just about this point, and then it goes back to a metal fencing. So the secure side against the parking lot and the secure side against South Summit both have this metal fencing that has an architectural detail to it. As we get into the plans, Chris described the first, second, and third floor for a total building square footage of 43,650. I want to try to point out a little bit of difference in building structure in the additions. The Sallyport addition and the front and rear vestibule obviously are roofed structures, and so you get about 2,000 square feet of Sallyport, and then 2 small 150 square foot and lower vestibule areas. The generator enclosure you'll see has architectural wall design that matches the balance of the addition that we're doing, but there's no roof. So it's a non-roof structure. And the transformer fencing enclosure obviously has no roof to it. The outbuilding is another 2,200 square feet worth of building. Okay? So this is the first of the views. This is the view from South Summit, the northeast corner of it. And again, we'll do comparative images a little bit later here, but to give you a sense of what's going on, that planter now has new landscaping in it. It has 2, we're thinking granite monument signs, one with the police, one with the city logos on them, or whatever they become. The flagpoles, and don't be deceived by the perspective, the flagpoles will be lower than the building, but obviously the American flag being the tallest of those. The balance of the facade that you're seeing from this point is more or less going to be cleaned, and you'll see a little bit of signage that goes onto the front of the facade, but the big change here will be that we would like to go to an anodized aluminum color on the window system so that there's a little bit of an offset from all of the green that goes on in those facades. So that's the biggest change that you'll see here. You'll also see that weather vestibule, which carries the same vocabulary of aluminum down. On the right-hand side, we do have this planters being pulled out a little bit further so that we can basically have an egress point from a community room that's on the right-hand side without actually doing a ramp and railing. So in other words, it will have landscaping in front of it rather than the whole railing along Old Town Avenue. And we're hoping that enhances that architecture a little bit. The way the building is going to be broken up, the first floor on the left-hand side is essentially police function. It's the interactive area that we would go to. The furthest to the left is the area that we hope we don't go to, which is the holding areas. The second floor of the whole of the building is police administration, so much of their administrative function goes on there. And the third floor, interestingly, has, on the left-hand side, it has locker rooms, it has a physical activity room, and then on the back side, a fitness room. And then the right-hand side is available for future city function. I did not note the right-hand side of the first floor, and the right-hand side of the first floor will essentially be a community and multi-use room, and then furthest to the right on that plan is going to be the council chambers. So the center point here would be an entry lobby that continues to carry through the building if you've been through the building as it stands. So you have direct access from front to back right through that central corridor.
Yeah, can I interrupt you just a second?
Yes, sir.
So when you say the council chambers, when this is complete, future meetings of us and the mayor and so forth will be there, not here?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so the second view that I showed you earlier was the existing facade from the southeast corner on South Summit. This will be the different facade. The other one will just be a cleaned up, brightened facade. This will be the same, however, it will have the vehicle sally port here. And the vehicle sally port essentially are two large garage doors that the police can pull their vehicles right into, and at that point, the garage doors close. We have a 6-foot metal fence that runs across to an architectural pier that picks up on the vocabulary of the balance of the building. That metal privacy fencing runs around to the left-hand side just a little bit further before it turns into the wood fence behind landscaping, so you wouldn't see the change from South Summit Avenue. As part of that architecture, we did struggle back and forth about how to treat the band at the top of the building. An original version had the continuation of the cast stone, and it really got the building looking far too horizontal in the end. And so after a lot of struggle with that, we went to the cornice pattern that's going on the top of the building and adapted that to the first floor, and we think that that's a fairly successful move on that part. Hope you agree with that one as well. These are cast stone panels in the middle, and the cast stone panels do pick up on the window system, and so that there's a scale element brought in that mimics that as well. And on this part of the building, you'll see that these base pieces are the same base as the column structure around the facade, so that rhythm gets carried around also. Continuation of a planter, and the planter in the front is intended to allow that gate to slide behind it without ever encumbering that, and then letting it close with landscaping put in front there also. And so this is an evening view on purpose, and that is because from this corner you'll see some of the first spandrel panel introductions. So on the third floor, this whole area from the 1.5 bay on the front facade all the way around the back bay is actually the locker room. And so in that case, we've got lockers that actually bang right up, well, within 6 or 8 inches of the window system. And so from a privacy standpoint, we're trying to handle that by letting more or less clear story lighting into those spaces through the spandrel. So during the day, that looks like window. At night, it will not look exactly like window. The second floor, just coming down from there, is administrative, so that will look very much like it does today. It's an office building, and that's essentially how it will function. And the first floor is a spandrel panel on the first 1.5 bays, full height. And the spandrel panel is full height because behind that are cells. And so it's spandrel panel, behind that is 8-inch concrete block reinforced, and we're trying to find a way to make that an architectural solution while still maintaining the window frame structure. And the last part of that is there is police function on the first floor of this side of the building. It's police administration, but to try to reduce the amount of ballistic window we put and to try to enhance the operations within, we did fill the first floor area with a spandrel panel there that we can put a bulletproof Kevlar behind, and then allow the upper area to be almost a clear story type lighting because it's above your head. And so that's the way that we've treated that to try to provide for the safety of the police officers in that area. So there is some spandrel that you will see at night. This is the view, few less cars across the parking lot. I'm sure that will change as the building is built. We are trying to enhance the entire plaza area here as an entry point by creating these. There is a grade difference, let me put it that way. There's about a 24-inch grade difference between that entry point and the curb edge. And so we thought we could take advantage of that by dropping ramps down from there. One's an ADA, one is not necessarily, and continue the band of concrete, cast stone, pardon me, out from that plaza entry point, which gradually reveal themselves as sitting areas. So it's kind of a nice public gathering spot both there and at this front point. It also provides us an area for signage. So we currently show City of Gaithersburg. We'll determine what we're going to do exactly there. The vestibule is a kind of mimicking that new architecture that we created for the sally port. That's a takeoff of the cornice that goes around the perimeter of the building. And so that's what that sally port is. The police entry, they've asked us at that point to make that a fairly subdued entry. So the only thing we're doing there is putting a weather canopy over it. And then they will have a simple door into the building at that point. Probably the biggest imposition to the parking lot is this generator enclosure. Those of you who've dealt with very large generators know there's intake and exhaust, and one side is taking the air down from the top, one side is exhausting out the end of a louver. This happens to be the louver system. The intent here is that the louver system and the roof screening that you will see from this facade match architecturally in color and basically the same pattern of system. So those two will be linked architecturally. You can see the black privacy fencing that's the same as the front fencing that provides the police the secure and private area that they need to pull in behind and also pull in the sally port. And I guess it's important to note that the fence that we're showing around the Pepco transformer is it's the same fencing as is around the secure entry here. And so that is tucked back in the corner here, directly adjacent to the electrical room, directly adjacent to the generator. And the last thing that we're trying to do, besides all of the landscaping that we're putting into this plaza, is we're trying to provide kind of a screening system on the cast stones so that we can get some greenery to grow up these walls and kind of carry that green from the plaza up the wall to reduce the impact of all of that wall for the generator. So those are the various things that we're doing there. There's one more entry point that I did want to point out. I think I pointed out the 1 second egress point required by code out of that large multi-purpose room. There's also a second means of egress required in the council chambers. It'll be locked in general, just have a panic bar on the inside. So that is this door in the center here, and it will have a rail and a step, or a rail and a small ramp down to the sidewalk to meet there. And I think that picks up the issues here. We will have resurfacing of the parking. We'll have repainting of the striping, so it'll look brand new. We show light fixtures, and we do some minor movement of the light fixtures in order to get them to work. Should have pointed out that the light fixtures in the front, we do have 2 light fixtures at the sally port. Let me just share that with you. We do have 2 light fixtures here at the South Summit point that we're just going to continue on the Old Town light fixtures at this point, so that continues the streetscape. These are those kind of simple wedge-shaped light fixtures that we're proposing, and we were going to propose those in the same finish as the window system to reduce the impact of the gooseneck light fixtures out there. So hopefully that's appealing as well. Okay. Comparison points, just to give you a sense of the existing on the top and the proposed below. Again, there's not a ton of difference between these 2 facades. Hopefully it will appear brighter because we are doing masonry restoration, masonry cleaning. Hopefully it will also appear brighter because we're providing anodized aluminum windows in there in lieu of the green windows. We are repainting all of the metal panels. The metal panels have faded on some sides, not on others, so we'd like to get a consistent look to all of the panels, so that's part of the project. And the entry vestibule that we talked about is probably the other difference. It will help to bring a little bit of light out to the edge of that line below the 16. We hope that that is something that improves this corner as well. And then, of course, you can see what our revised planters will look like once we've cleaned them all out and redone them. The comparison from the southeast corner, as you can see, again, the spandrel panel will make some difference to how those windows are perceived in certain areas. And then you can see how we've tried to pick up the architectural rhythm and how that does fill, we think, in a complementary way, this corner that currently has parking in it. And we hope that the architectural treatment here is picking up well from the building. And then the parking lot, again, the right-hand side is the biggest architectural change. And again, we're redoing the plaza. We're trying to pick up some additional architectural elements there and trying to make a nice entry for evening use of the city council chambers and any of the other spaces within. I probably defined everything that's going on in these elevations, but if you were looking for specifics, this helps to try to define the brick versus the aluminum window versus the repainted green. And so the first one is that corner that we talked about from Old Town and South Summit, just kind of giving you the scale. And the things that you don't pick up, as you know, in perspective are how you are aligning mullions with other mullions and so on. And so we're working hard to try to make sure that those do align architecturally with other mullion patterns within the building. And then the facade from Old Town Avenue has that little door in it that is an egress door from the multi-purpose room as well. most significant of those changes, and then the most significant views of the roof screening system, are on the Sallyport elevation from the south, which is the top one, and then the South Summit Avenue elevation. So if I were to start at the bottom of the South Summit elevation, you can see that, again, we tried to pick up the rhythm. And interestingly, if you really are picking up the window rhythm, you would have major, minor, major, minor, major, minor. The depth of the Sallyport does not allow us to do that, so we basically put another major on the end and 2 minors filling in with the window systems, and we hope that that achieved the same goal as going across that base level. We did carry the base along at the same height as the base of the metal panel system, and the screening, I should say the fence gate structure goes across to a column that we hope works well with the column of the facade as well. On the Sallyport elevation, which is the top elevation, this was probably one of the more challenging ones, because for your use, the line that I'm defining right here is the edge of the roof line of the building. And it's very interesting because that portion over to here picks up all of the electrical rooms and electrical interface between that very large generator and the transformer. From this line over are all of the Sallyport structures. And so at first what we were doing is picking up as close as we could to that same rhythm of the windows. On this side, we had that rhythm going, but it was very heavy when you got all those columns into it. And so we tried to reduce the scale by just letting that cast stone continue to run. And then kind of in the middle, because we were having such a hard time working to carry the architectural lines down through these being the garage doors and so on, we went with a full brick here. So the architecture under the roof is a minor, major, minor, and then you get into the generator enclosure. And so, again, that's all behind the fenced line, and we hope that you see that less. We hope none of you ever see that. The part that we hope works architecturally, though, is that we do kind of work carefully with the lines of the building above. These two facades, the plaza facade, this is the one that's kind of in the corner of the building. And so if you were looking straight on at the council chambers entry, this is what you would see, and the building kind of wraps around you at this point. This is the parking lot elevation, the bottom elevation, directly from the parking lot, and gives you a head-on view of what some of the roof screening looks like, what that entry vestibule looks like, what the end of the generator enclosure looks like, and what the fence line looks like for the transformer enclosure. Then the last part of this one that's fairly important is once you're engaged in that plaza and you're actually in that area, you would look to your right, and this drawing on the upper right-hand corner shows you the extent of the cast stone that you would see around the generator enclosure, and the grid line is what we would like to grow some kind of vegetation on to try to continue the green up a wall and try to reduce some of the impact of the generator enclosure. The outbuilding, as I said, contains mainly storage. It does contain a bay for vehicle processing, and it contains a couple of other storage pieces as well as bike storage for the police. What we did here was to try to make this building somewhat subservient to the main building. It's got a facade that has the same basic elements but simplified. So it's just got a simple brick pattern in the midpoints. It's got a base but not the articulated base that the building itself does, and not an articulated entablature across the edge here. So it's just a simple cast stone band, and then the triangular portion is a stucco product, just to try to simplify that, and it gives us an element to carry around the perimeter of the building as well. So it's a standing seam roof structure. The corners are articulated with brick, and then the balance of the parts that are basically behind the fence lines are all a stucco exterior on masonry. There is one change. I should say that you folks received the package earlier, and one of the things that you may notice that's changed in this one set of drawings, the back entry, and I should have brought this up when I was there, the back facade perspective, the difference between the two images, the one that I showed tonight and the one that you had in there, was basically the fence around the transformer was shown as a brick enclosure around the transformer. And so we changed that to a fence after a lot of discussion about how heavy a brick would appear in that courtyard. So that's changed. The thing that we will likely be changing from this point forward, this is a dumpster enclosure located in the back side of the site. And we had originally continued to carry that little articulated base at the corners. We'd like to treat that the same way as we're going to treat the outbuilding, just run a simple cast stone band around there because it looks like it's getting a little fussy with the little base pieces. So this will likely show up in the construction drawings without those corner pieces that are overly articulated. The fences that run around the perimeter, I tried to define the extent of those fences. The metal privacy fence that we're proposing along the front of the building and along the parking lot is the one on the left-hand side. And the wood privacy fence that runs around between St. Martin and this property would be the one that you see on the right. We're doing metal posts with two-sided wood fence, so both sides are architecturally treated. And there will be a little cap on the top of each of these metal posts, hopefully to give them a little bit more life. So that's the architecture. We do have floor plans as well if it helps you to understand how those window systems work with the floor plan, and I'd be happy to bring those up at your discretion.
Well, let me lead off by thanking you very much. Obviously, an incredible amount of thought and care went into this, as well as your presentation, so thank you. I just want to see, before we start up here on the dais, is there anybody from the audience that would like to say anything at all, and
Or ask questions.
or ask questions? And the point is, this is a courtesy review, and the city wants to be as open as possible. So even if someone would like to speak now, something else comes up in questions and answers or anything, there's going to be last licks. We really want everybody who would like to have a chance to contribute. So is there anything at this juncture, knowing there's going to be a second bite at the apple? All right, thank you. Robert, let me start with you.
Okay.
Yes, it's courtesy review, so certainly.
All right. Well, like,
Yeah, we do have two architects up here, but my practice is to generally start at one end and then the next time we go at the other, so.
Would you like to check for conflicts of interest?
Why, of course. I don't know that we have to on a courtesy review, but perchance, I don't want to be arrested. I mean, I'll give you, that's my conflict of interest. Do we perchance have a conflict of interest here? Anybody feel in any way?
Well, I would announce that I live about a half block from this building, so I'm interested, but I wouldn't say it's a conflict.
Okay. Nor your picture in the post office. Okay.
Which one?
All right. Well, thank you, Dean.
I would-
Are there any other,
yes.
before we go further, are there any other protocol questions you'd like to ask?
Yes, no, I mean, I would like to state that I met the applicant outside of the building before we opened up. He introduced himself. And so all we did was essentially just talk about the weather, but I wanted to disclose that in case anybody saw us speaking.
We literally talked about the weather.
Come on, you guys were admiring his beautiful Jag. All right, well,
It is a nice Jag.
we want to be above reproach. Is there anything else that we should clear the air on before we get into substance? Okay, Robert.
yeah, first of all, like Chris said, a fantastic presentation. It was detailed. It was, I mean, it gave us every single element we would have asked and then some. I appreciate that. I like how the building, like I said, it's kind of a subtle change, but it still kind of has some pop to it. A couple things I like. Well, love the old style police lights that you showed in the front. That's going to bring a lot of character, a lot more than people will realize to it. You were saying about the signage. You still haven't decided exactly what you're going to put. I know you said say is there going to say police department anywhere on the outside of the building right now?
Again, the signage is we're going through the signage process now to determine what is shown. We're basically demonstrating areas on the building where we think signage would apply best. And so you are seeing City of Gaithersburg written in places. You are seeing the emblem in places. The police station portion, at that entry, we talked about a police sign over the top, but we think that we're probably not going to. We're trying to keep these entries quiet.
Okay.
The fact that the front of the building has those monuments and they're the nice police globes is about the extent of what we're going to demonstrate. We're trying to keep the entry exit for the police quiet. However, the public entry to it is important at the front.
Okay. Another question I had, it's about that South Summit Avenue, the entrance or, you know, exit entrance for the police cars by the kind of the bay.
Yes.
Is there any talk of, it seemed like there might be a lot of traffic coming in and out of there, any sort of warning signage along there, whether stop signs, anything for cars, anything to that effect?
Yeah, that's a good point. So the reality is the traffic is not intended to we don't plan on much traffic out of this access point. The one through the parking lot is where the police would like to use the majority of time, and the width is such that they can actually use it as an egress. So the patterns that you currently see them using, and if you're familiar with it, they're currently using the stalls of that parking lot against their building. Mm-hmm. We continue to have a very similar traffic flow to what they currently have.
Okay. And just kind of curious if I could, what are they planning, since you're building that outbuilding, are there plans for the old police station right now as far as integrating it?
The city hasn't determined what the future
Sir, would you state your name for the record,
Dennis
please?
Henslinger, Deputy City Manager. The
Thank
city
you so
has
much.
not determined the use for what would be the former police station at this time. It would not be incorporated into the police facilities. It might be used for other city uses, but not part of the police department.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dean?
All righty. First and foremost, I want to say that I've considered your building. You were the original architect for this?
No.
Okay, well, then I'll just compliment them. This is one of the best buildings I've seen where you take a new building and you put it in a historic setting. I think it's terrific. I do like the existing green panels with the green frames on the glass. Framed glass. However, the revisions that you're putting in for the window frames, that looks very nice and very acceptable as well. For the spandrel panels or the opaque panels, I think you did answer this question, but I want to clarify it. Are you going to be using spandrel glass whenever you're referring to spandrel panels?
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yes.
The picture that's up there now on the screen, I know you said it was a night view, and that's to show that it's not, it is the opaque section. Won't the band that's opaque, which is above the green panels, won't that be more reflective than this render is actually showing?
It will. This looks a little flat as
That's
a
okay.
rendering, so you're correct. There'll be a glare
Terrific.
to it. Yeah.
Terrific. Okay, very
Reflection.
good. Also in this picture, this is South Summit Avenue, of course, and so my thoughts are for the Sally Port. The front panels on it appear to me to resemble more of a garage door look, which makes this, in my opinion, look more like a garage, which is, of course, its function. But I'm wondering, did you guys consider extending down the spandrel panels in front of that? Because it would then tend to look like it is more of an office building and be more friendly, I would think. The next question I have is for the black fence, which I think is really a very nice look, but did you consider making that the dark green to match the panel color?
We did not, actually.
Do you have a reason not to? I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't. I can make a case for either way. That is, the black tends to make it look separate from the rest of the building and giving more of a hands-off image to it, and that's perfectly acceptable. But I was just curious if you went down that path at all.
No.
And that's about it. That's it. So my only thoughts.
Thank you, Dean. John?
Well, once again, Commissioner Ventola has taken virtually everything I was going to ask. Let me just to reestablish, the metal fencing of which you spoke will proceed from the building itself southward on South Summit Avenue to the end of the property. Is that correct? And then turn the corner?
Hopefully I stopped. Whoop, of course I didn't. I meant to stop the slide. Yes, so it continues from the Sally Port south on South Summit and then comes across behind St. Martin And it actually does a bump behind this landscaping right about this point before it turns into a wood fence. So it's probably 70 feet from the road before it turns into wood.
And I noticed that the panels on it are horizontal, whereas those of the wooden fence are vertical. Is any thought to conforming?
That's a good point, and we did not. That's a very interesting point.
See?
Touche, touche.
That's all.
All right,
Thank you.
even non-architects, all right.
Yeah,
There
thank you.
go.
I don't really have any questions. I just want to say that it's very impressive. Although I would add that I agree that the possibility of the fence being green in color, you said that you would like the police entrances and exits to be quiet, and the green would blend and not be as obvious
Interesting.
as the black. Just an opinion.
Okay?
Thank you. Dean?
First of all, I think it's very sensitive, what you've done with what you're showing, and I think I'm really impressed by it. My main questions lie with two things. One, the question with the spandrel panel, and primarily, and I know the rendering that you have kind of distorts it a little bit and makes it look more dramatic than it actually will look in terms of the variation between the spandrel panel and the clear glass above. But have you considered using a tinted glass to kind of cut down on that variation a little bit?
So by the tinted glass, do you mean that is actually translucent through to the inside, or do you just mean using a tinted glass as the spandrel?
No, I'm saying the glass above the spandrel, perhaps.
Oh, that would be interesting. We had a lot of discussions about what we would do with the glazing in areas above that, and I think for consistency's sake, and I know it's not consistent in that window panel, but we thought it important to have at least some band of horizontal that was somewhat clear. And I should state that they're showing up very clear glass here. I think today we all know we would probably be using a level of tint to it that probably won't let it happen quite to this extent. It would appear more like what you see in this daytime rendering, where it's always kind of a reflection.
Yeah, and I know you're trying to get the effect, so
Yes.
it is somewhat stylized, where it's not going to appear that way. The question with the canopies. First of all, the canopy in the parking lot, I think it's fantastic. It works really well with the building. The canopy on the corner, I think it's a little more challenging, primarily because you have that indentation, that two-story indentation into the current entry. And my question is, how is that vestibule going to be? How's the roof going to work on that vestibule?
So currently, that is a clear area behind that number 16 sign panel. And so what we're doing is creating a full roof line behind that, and it comes up to the edges of that 16 panel, more or less.
Okay.
One of the conversations that we had was to make it green, because it also happens to be outside the chief's conference room. And we thought that might treat that part a little bit more architecturally. The continuing conversation has been, how's that going to work on that northeast light? And I keep arguing there's at least an hour per summer that will get of daylight. So it is a challenge. We're trying to figure out exactly how to treat the roof there.
So I would love to actually fill in that second story and just carry down the facade from above. And I think then the mullion patterns, the patterns of the vestibule would align more closely, because once you get that relationship of the vestibule coming out to the 16, then it goes back and then back out. It kind of, that's the most confusing element of, I think, everything you're trying to do.
Okay.
And it's difficult because it's the nature of the existing building, as opposed to, I mean, it just makes it a difficult issue.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, I love the fence, the metal fence. I was questioning the color as well, but I'm not sure if I would change it. I mean, I know that's a little bit in the eye of the beholder, but I just think the style is really, really cool. Overall, and I think what you did with the generator enclosure and the sally port, I mean, that's a tough design problem, and you handled it very well. And I think the way it relates to the building is really sensitive and really well done. So I appreciate it.
Okay, well, I will bat last, as is my wont. First, again, just an incredibly detailed and thoughtful effort, which I think succeeds amazingly. In terms of just a couple of the tweaks that have been suggested, I would echo two. One would be the piece where I guess it's the part of South Summit there, where you've got the garage doors coming on the inside, but they look like garage doors from the outside. I think you're giving nothing away to make it look a little more like it's a building it just seems to me you're giving away a chance to do something to just make that whole line a little more congruent. And the second thing is, in terms of the color of the fence, if what you wanted to do was say, this is police, we mean business, this is no kidding, black is the way to go. On the other hand, given the subtle greens and the really sense of this is a beautiful office building for a town that means business, but friendly business, I would advocate some kind of a very dark green. I think it would be compatible with everything else, and I just think it would more lend the sense of, gee, what an interesting, nice office building. Now, let me once again make a call out to the audience. Sir, I saw you smiling happily at some of our suggestions, but nobody has to, and if you'd like to, you're more than welcome.
Well, I guess I'm the only citizen here, so.
Now, wait.
Well, good evening. My name's Ken Wagner. I live at 35 South Summit, so I'll be looking at that one corner right there from my house.
Sir, my condolences. I take it you live near Commissioner Roddy?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
We're good friends, actually. I have to say that your presentation was great, and what I see you're doing is absolutely wonderful for the community and the building. With my background and experience and everything, I would like to ask, and I don't know what the budget is, for one thing, because money can buy anything. But I've had some experience in the past with putting the diesel generators and all the electrical equipment underground. Like I said, I don't know if you've got that kind of money or not, but I don't know what the size of the generator is, but it can't be that big since it's not that big of a building. I would think that you probably gave that some thought possibly, especially because budget would be the constraint on that. And what you've done, I'm guessing, is based on what your budget is.
Yes.
But I do like a green fence too.
Thank you.
All right. So any other thoughts, ruminations, anything before we thank the applicant? And Chief, is there anything you want to add?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity to come before this committee, and I know I certainly, as well as Mr. Schrader, appreciate your favorable comments, because having worked with him now for about 9 months, I guess he's been very thorough and very, very responsive and accommodating to all of our requests.
Right.
Frankly, I didn't know how much of an undertaking it was to move from one location to another, and it's been a very good educational experience for me. And I think we're not complete yet with the design, but we're getting close. And I've been sharing the design as it's developed throughout the process. And all the feedback from the police staff as well as the civilian support staff has all been favorable with design. I really do think when this is all said and done, this is going to be a great addition to the community.
Right. Well, sir, I don't have to tell you what a great city and team you're a part of, but I just want to thank you for your service and those of your men and women. I mean, you're the unsung heroes, and just thanks for what you do every day. May look simple, but you have no idea what you're walking into when that call comes in, so thank you.
You're welcome, and I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
All right, Chris, do we need to do anything else official?
No, that's it. I will prepare a memo which will be presented to the Planning Commission.
Very well. Well, our next order of business, here we are.
Great job.
Thank you.
Yep, yeah, that was exquisite, and lefties represent.
You saw that. Yes.
Okay, so Chris, wind us through, so there are people actually willing to serve?
I don't know, are there? So you have direction on your
Yes.
agenda. It's the
Okay.
same
You know how
procedure
well I follow direction.
we've been following for the past few years, so I'll leave it to you, all of you.
Fine. Well, let me just start straight ahead, and are there any nominations for the office of chair?
I would nominate you, Chairman Kurtz.
Okay. Have we a second? Nope. Well, that failed. All right, who else wants to nominate somebody?
I'll nominate Dean Ventola.
Okay, Dean, have we a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay. All right, well, it sounds like we have one nominee. So I'll make a motion to close the nominations.
I make a nomination to close nominations. That's what I'm supposed to say. or
Okay, do
say
we have a
aye?
second on that?
For whom?
Well, Dean is the only
Close.
applicant. We did not have a second on D.
No.
So do we have a second to close the nominations?
Second.
Okay. So,
I don't think you can second your own nomination, so I'll second it. You made a nominate, an
I
offer to
was
close.
trying to just close it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
sure
but
what to do.
I'm
Thank
seconding
you.
your motion.
Thank you.
okay. So we, all those in favor of closing the nominations for chair?
Aye.
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 Okay, opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. So the vote for nomination carries. So Dean, you are now chair.
Thank you.
So I now call for a motion to elect the, no, wait a minute.
It says chair, but I think I meant vice chair.
Okay. Oh, no, oh, here, wait a minute. So wait a minute, hold on a second. Elect nominee. Okay, so I now make a motion to elect the nominee, excuse me, I jumped ahead. To elect the nominee to the office of chair to the HDC. So we need somebody to make this motion.
I move that we declare Dean Ventola elected to the office of chair of the HDC.
Okay, have we a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Vote carries. Now, I call for nominations for the vice chair of the Historic District Commission.
I nominate John Roddy for vice chair.
Second.
Okay. Thank you. All right, do we have any other nominations for vice chair?
Well, I would nominate you, Mr. Kurtz.
I decline. Thank you. I think you will serve far better. So do we have any other nominations for vice chair? Okay. Then, let's see. I move that we close the nominations for the vice chair of the HDC.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Now, I call for a motion to elect the nominee to the office of vice chair, in this case, John Roddy, as vice chair of the HDC.
I so move.
Okay, have we a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very well. Well, congratulations to you both. All right, let's see what else.
Very good, sir.
From the staff. So we're moving to the staff. Anything from the staff?
We do. After last month's meeting, Commissioner LaFrance requested photos of 11 Cedar Avenue, which I have on the screen now, in Observatory Heights to show the commission the completed project. What you have is the before picture. Some background information: the HDC provided a courtesy review of this property at its August 2016 meeting, and the comments were shared with the Planning Commission. The HDC had 4 main comments, and I'll move on to the drawings provided by the applicant, which were reviewed by the HDC at that meeting. The 4 comments were as follows: install sash windows and not sliding windows. These were sliding windows here. Widen the front stairs. Here's the front stairs as they appeared. Shift the front stairs to the right and remove the retaining wall. And widen the front porch columns. So those were the columns. And I have photos of the completed project. So here is what it looks like now.
Wow.
And I thought maybe this year when we just start discussing awards, that this might be something we would like to consider.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's-
Absolutely.
And
I
we have
think that
different angle views here.
Doing a really nice
We
job.
all worked really hard to make some suggestions of how to bring this property back to life, and they apparently took our suggestions, and I think they did a fine job.
And I live right down, I mean, I live in Observatory Heights. I live right down from the street. I watched from beginning to end. It looked like for a while, kind of stalled, but what they've accomplished has been fantastic for this.
Really an impressive structure.
So if, in a couple months, we can revisit this if we'd
Yes.
like to present them with an award. So I'll keep that in mind. My other comment is that I'm trying to get together our annual training. So I will be
Yeah.
sending an email out hopefully shortly, and we can try to pick some dates that work for everyone's
Great.
schedule.
That'd be
So that's all I have.
Gotcha.
Excellent.
All right, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you.
We're getting right to the commissioners next, and you're top of the list.
Excellent. There's a property at 106 North Frederick Avenue that you may be able to pull up right now. Chris, I'm sorry, I forgot to get ahead of,
No problem.
ahead of time. It was Hershey's Dry Cleaners. I'm very interested in finding out how possibly historical the building is, because now that the family just decided to retire and is no longer a business, we may see this building before us at some point. And my other question was, if we find it interesting, can we add it to the historic master plan? Because I had forgotten to ask before. I know that we had some properties of interest in it, but what if properties come up that are also interesting?
That's not the one there. It's,
I don't think.
That's not it.
Because I think
Yeah.
we
That's not it.
reviewed this. and-
Yeah.
That's the
No,
hair
no.
bar, isn't it?
it's
no.
North
No,
North
it's
Frederick.
in North Frederick.
Okay.
Yes, 106 North Frederick. It's next to the dry cleaning warehouse, and after, if you're going south, it's after Village Green.
There we go.
Right, yes, to the right, with the green roof, the brick, yes, there we go.
So I would have to double check. I can't recall off the top of my head if this is listed in our master plan
Yeah,
as an
yeah.
other resource of note. Our master plan has not been approved yet, so we can certainly add that as another resource of note before it is approved.
But I don't know anything about it yet.
Yeah, and
so
I
thought
can
we should bring
do
it to
some
our
research
attention.
and see what we can dig up on that.
Yeah, okay, great. And then I guess the other big question of the evening, now that we had this wonderful presentation tonight, is what do we know about the future plans to the building we are now in, that we call City Hall?
It's a great question.
And is it now time for us to consider this as a building of interest?
She's had her eye on it for a while, you know.
I have.
Again, I can't recall if it is listed in our master plan or not. It may be another resource of note.
Now, I do know that there's an important history associated with this building.
Correct,
The
absolutely.
peonies and all of that, so certainly.
And we've had this discussion before.
Yes.
About whether the addition kind of ruins the historic character of the building or not. I know this is something the HDC's talked about in the past.
We have.
Well-
But everything can change, so make note of the fact that it could change. I think it's time for us to start thinking about it.
Sure.
And that's all I have.
Can I
Yes,
talk about that
please.
idea? This building, because it's connected, or the addition is connected directly to it, the whole building, the existing and the addition would be considered historic at that point in
Yeah.
time?
you
Well,
would have
one of
to
the things
consider the
that
whole-
the architect who designed the addition did was he truly made it look different than the rest of the building. I don't know if it was for cost or if it was intent, it doesn't really matter. It clearly looks different. And you pointed that out, Mark, that that's something that matters to you. So I personally think that this building itself here, the original building, is certainly worth preserving. And I would think that it could be considered for the entire parcel historic, and the perhaps there could be a caveat in it saying that the addition itself can be changed if need be over the years. I mean,
Yes, because the
Yeah.
real point is, if it were to be historically designated,
Right.
it would come before us.
yeah,
And if, let's say hypothetically, an applicant wanted to demolish the addition,
right.
it would simply come before us, so
Some
we
people
can
would vote
consider
for
it.
that.
Exactly. So that's all I'm saying.
I
I
agree
think
with all
it's
that.
important for us
I might
to be able to.
clarify that, the building
Yes.
is used in the same fashion, still would be part of City Hall. There is no intentions of changing the outside. As you know, we just completed $1 million roof project
Oh.
on both this building and the addition building. So we will probably repurpose this room, but there will be no other changes proposed.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
guys.
very much.
All right, thank you. Anything else for the good of the order?
Yeah, I'd like to, I mean, as we were having the election tonight, I just wanted to thank Chris for how many years now you've been chair.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes.
And doing a great job, and I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Oh,
Yes.
truly my pleasure. Thank you. A pleasure and an honor and a lot of fun.
Can we give him an applause?
Because- oh, thank you. Look at that. All right. And here's, just so you know, your wisdom in the chair you elected. Let me pass these down this way. I think there's one more for you and three this way. Dean, you don't get one. So this guy is more than a pretty face. There I was, sitting on the pot. This is a man's reading
Nice
room. Ladies, I don't mean to be offensive.
Hey, I had a father, I
This
know.
is a man. And lo and behold, full page spread in there. I read Architectural Digest like I guess most men look at a Playboy or something. But anyway, there is Dean. Obviously, it was somebody else's work that he photoshopped. But there it is a full page ad in Architectural Digest, and this is no
Nice.
small matter. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Dean,
Thank you.
that's awesome.
Very cool.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Where was this one?
It's up in Frederick County.
Beautiful house.
Really. Very impressive.
Was this from scratch?
Mhm.
Wow. Excellent. All right, well, the old chair is happy to, and I can actually give you a gavel if you'd like.
If I
Nice.
could
Pass the
quickly
baton.
state one thing, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to remind everybody that the 2018 draft historic preservation element of the 2018 master plan is currently in its 60-day review period, which is ending soon, because that started December 1st. And that the planning commission, and we'll also make this note to the planning commission again at their meeting, but they are also having a joint public hearing with the mayor and city council February 20th. So again, just want to keep you on the loop of what's going on with that.
And I've forgotten, we do have a job at hand. If we want to assist the city staff in giving them a criteria of what they can approve without a meeting. Remember, we talked about that, and we haven't done it. need
We
to-
plan on bringing that back at a later date to
But
discuss with
thank
you.
you, but I'm just trying to keep
Yeah.
it in the loop, yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay,
Ready?
two other things for me before being open to a motion to adjourn. I want to pick up on what you brought to our attention. May is Historic Preservation Month, so
Yeah.
hopefully be thinking about, it'll be up to Dean and y'all. But to make awards, but in connection with that, and of course, I'm your representative on the Historic District Commission, but the Historic Commission and Preservation Maryland want to do something for Preservation Month. And what they've asked, and the Historic Preservation Commission, which is an advisory commission in Washington Grove, we're planning to set up a walking and a house tour. So I'll keep you posted as that goes along. But for those of you that are not familiar with Washington Grove, it's a very interesting part of the history of Maryland, and I think it's one of maybe two actual townships here where we have our own mayor, we have our own town council, we have our own planning, we have our own zoning. And it started out in 1872 as a Chautauqua Methodist, really a church revival. And the town became a township in 1937. The entire town is on the designated and is on the historic register, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll keep you posted as that comes along. But it should be a lot of fun. And then whether it's at our house, which is an old, the front of our house was a cottage from 1906, to which 2 cottages from 1907 were added, but the first piece came from 1882. And we're going to end up with a reception either there or at one of the other historic houses. So I'll keep you guys posted.
Oh, I love
Thank you.
that. Thank
Sounds
you.
great.
Beautiful.
And actually, I just really want to thank this thankless guy. I mean, if we accomplished anything, and I am proud of what we accomplished, this is definitely my right-hand guy. And all of you commissioners, everybody on this DS now and everybody before, you have been very conscientious, very professional, very diligent, and it will be up to the new chair to set his own mark. But what I strove for, and I had this in black and white somewhere back in the day, is that we represent the city, and we owe our duty to every applicant that comes before us, every staff member, everybody. So we want to use their time well. There's any entity of government has certain protocols and procedures and whatnot, and people may not be very happy with having to go through a review of a HOP or whatever, but I would like to think that we have done our best to treat them openly and fairly and professionally and efficiently. And I think that's the best we can do. My parting now will be to put in a plug for something I feel strongly about, that we can start doing some outreach from people and really seeing how well we're doing or not. Are there things they would like to see that we could do to be more user-friendly to them? Are things we can cease doing which they think are maybe duplicative or unnecessary or anything? Because we're here, they're coming before us, but let's, on behalf of the city, be a can-do place. Wow, we went to the HDC and it was a pain in the tail, but they gave us a fair shake.
I would like to do a better job of introducing applicants to resources that have historic architecture and so forth in their backgrounds. But I know we have to be careful because we can't give somebody the gold star and favoritism and all of that. I don't know how we could incorporate it into what we do, but I think it would be an incredibly helpful tool for our applicants to know they can go to several trusted, educated, formally trained folks.
Okay. Now, I realize I have one last maybe thing, but this is really important, and it is a really appreciation of the staff support we get. And Trudy, Chris, Frank, everybody, and everybody that's here and everybody that's been here before. We could not possibly operate professionally or efficiently if it weren't for the backup you give us. So really, thank you, and I think, Dean, you're gonna be impressed as I mean, most of the stuff happens up here, but there are times when you'll be consulting with the staff and they'll be consulting with you, or Frank will be coming to us, or we'll be coming to Frank, or whatever.
Mr. Chair, just as the attorney, I do advise other commissions as well, and I do want you to know,
yes, sir,
that I've often used you as an example to make sure that commission members, that a complete record is made of exactly why the commission's making a decision and why commission members are supporting or opposing a particular motion to approve or deny or what have you. And tonight, for the courtesy review, you very deliberately start here and give everybody that respects the commission members, certainly, because you're here serving the city, as you pointed out, in a voluntary way, that also creates a very substantial record that would be very hard for an appeal to be based on, well, there's not a complete record, we really don't know. Well, how could you not know? Each member of the commission spoke, and maybe as simple as saying, well, I agree with what the other one said, but the problem you can have is when you have 5, 6, 7 people there and there's a motion and a second with very limited discussion. That can happen. So again, I have used you as an example to say, need to make sure that this is what you do, because I've witnessed it in other commissions. Sometimes you will have a number of different agenda items and you get through it. It works. And in some ways it can even be more efficient because you're making sure if there is anything to discuss, it's out on the table.
Oh, well, thank
So,
you, that's
thank
very
you.
kind.
Mhm.
Just here. Before I call for a motion to adjourn, I'm going to call on our new chair to make perhaps his important, look, you, I was trying to see if I think I have 2 gavels here. I was going to let you choose your gavel.
That's so sweet.
The gavel du jour.
Oh, well.
Maybe it's in the shop.
We have a gap.
All right, well, then I'll keep this as a memento. All right, well, the chair is open to a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great.
Thanks again, Chris.